Right now. Mr. President, while you are answering questions about marijuana on the internet and your Treasury Secretary is busy devaluing the dollar, people are suffering both here and abroad. And that is our headline this Thursday night. Day number 66 of False Hope, Loose Change. The world is watching. They're watching as your cabinet can't get your policy straight. They're watching while members of your party dismember your own budget. And they're watching as you continue to push for the greatest expansion of government that this nation has ever seen. And they're watching, Mr. President, and they don't necessarily like what they're seeing. Now, just ask our first guest tonight. He is a British member of the European Parliament who turned heads when he excoriated Prime Minister Gordon Brown and his economic agenda that is very similar to what is happening right here in our country.
The truth, Prime Minister, is that you have run out of our money. The country as a whole is now in negative equity. Every British child is born owing around £20,000. Servicing the interest on that debt is going to cost more than educating the child. Now, once again today you try to spread the blame around. You spoke about an international recession, international crisis. We are now running a deficit that touches 10% of GDP, an almost unbelievable figure. Now, it's not that you're not apologising. Like everyone else, I've long accepted that you're pathologically incapable of accepting responsibility for these things. It's that you're carrying on, willfully worsening our situation, wantonly spending what little we have left. Last year, in the last 12 months, 100,000 private sector jobs have been lost, and yet you created 30,000 public sector jobs. Prime Minister, you cannot carry on forever squeezing the productive bit of the economy in order to fund an unprecedented engorgement of the unproductive bit. You cannot spend your way out of recession or borrow your way out of debt. And when you repeat in that wooden and perfunctory way that our situation is better than others, that we're well placed to weather the storm, I have to tell you, you sound like a Brezhnev-era apparatchik giving the party line. You know, and we know, and you know that we know that it's nonsense. Everyone knows that Britain is worse off than any other country as we go into these hard times.
And Mr. Hannon, he joins us tonight from London. Mr. Hannon, thank you for being with us. I got to tell you, do you realize how your message is resonating loudly and clearly in America tonight, and how inspired people are by your words?
Hey, you say the nicest things. Listen, I'm happy to come on this show anytime you want me. I'm pretty perplexed by the whole thing. I was trying to think of if you could come up with the most boring phrase to enter into a Google search engine, and I thought speech to the European Parliament. So I'm completely bowled over by what you've said.
Yeah, well, look, go over every line. We now are adding, by the year 2019, we're going to have nearly $900 billion just on interest on the debt with what Obama's spending. He's spending more than every president from George Washington to George W. Bush in terms of the debt he's accumulated here. And as you point out, you can't spend your way out of a recession. Borrow your way out of debt. Do you think the world is making a mistake and that we're really all collectively going to suffer these consequences?
We're all collectively going to suffer the consequences. I mean, it's not our mistake. The mistake is being made by a small number of political leaders and a small number of their advisors. You know, it's common sense that when you're in debt, you spend less. You know, anybody except a politician can see that. Anyone could see that in their private life. You've run up too big a debt, you've run up too big a mortgage, you try and sort it out. But of course, if you're either a banker or a politician, you have a different take on these things. And because of course it isn't your money. I think it was, you know, that great phrase of Milton Friedman that there's only two kinds of money in this world. There's your money and there's my money. You know, we're very careful about the second of those. But of course, for politicians, it's all your money.
Yeah, anybody but a politician can see that. I think that's going to go down as one of the all-time classics. Unfortunately, it's true. You know, one of the things, Mr. Hannon, that we're debating in America, and Barack Obama wants to lay down $634 billion for nationalized health care. Well, we've had nationalized health care in Great Britain, and we've had it in France, and we've had it in a single payer in Canada. My question to you is, based on what you said, I would like you to explain to the American people if this is a good idea through this prism. I read in the Daily Mail last week that your health system, the NHS, literally has a group of people that decided government bureaucrats that they weren't going to give drugs to women with breast cancer and a certain rare form of stomach cancer. The rationing body is what they call it. Is it a good idea for the U.S. to invest in nationalized health care?
Yeah, first of all, it's important that you understand that that's a true story, and it's a typical story. It's not in the newspapers because it's unusual. We have a rationing body that's called the National Institute for Clinical Excellence. It's known as NICE, N-I-C-E, which, coincidentally, there was an adult novel by C.S. Lewis in the 1940s where the NICE was this kind of satanic conspiracy. And in terms of their malign effects, you can sort of see the connection. I mean, it's a terrible thing to put anyone in the situation, any bureaucrat in the situation of having to make those life and death decisions, because they are literally life and death decisions for people. But the worst thing is for you as the recipient of healthcare, because you've got no control over what you get. There's no contractual relationship between you and the suppliers. So, you know, if they treat you today or next week or 6 weeks from now, or it's too late because your condition has already deteriorated too, there's nothing you can do about it. You are expected to queue up with a big smile and be grateful for what you have. And you know, it's the last survivor of the kind of socialist post-war conspiracy. Socialist post-war. I'm tired. It's midnight here. The socialist post-war consensus
let me ask you,
in the UK.
So your advice to America is stay away from nationalized health care. I think you're very clear on that. Let me ask you
Listen, if you get nothing else from what I'm saying this evening, please do not make that mistake. If there are any congressmen watching this who think, yeah, it might be a bit fairer, yeah, it'd be a bit sort of cozy, you know, I promise you it is worse for doctors, it's worse for patients, it's worse for taxpayers.
Let me ask you one last quick question here, if I can, because, you know, a lot of Europe supported Barack Obama heading into this election. You supported Barack Obama heading into this election. That's why I find your comments fascinating. Now, the United States of America, I think it's embarrassing to get lectured by leaders of France, the European Union president, the Czech Republic president, by China, the communist Chinese, on how to run a better economy. What has happened in terms of the faith and hope and trust and confidence that Europe once had in the president?
Yeah, so well, you know, first of all, I think I can trump your story. We have done all the things that you've done wrong. We've borrowed more, we've spent more, we've increased the deficit, and we've pretended that there's some clever plan about it. But we've done something that you haven't done yet, which is we've gone for the Zimbabwe option. We've started just printing more money. And I actually saw a newspaper in Zimbabwe saying, you know, the poor old Brits, look at the mess they're in. You know, they're having to do this, and they haven't even got the excuse that we have of economic. So we are pitied by Mugabe's Zimbabwe, which I think trumps even your communist Chinese thing. Look,
I've got to
what made your country great? What made your people strong and prosperous and free was
capitalism.
That it was small government right from the beginning, right from the Declaration of Independence. There was a distrust of the concentration of power and a confidence in the freedom of the individual. And you know, people will always make better decisions for themselves than administrators will make for them. And when you lose that, if you Europeanize yourselves under the illusion that it's kind of, you know, a bit hipper and a bit nicer and, you know, cuddlier, and you'll make yourselves more popular in the world, you will throw away what made people actually respect you, not least because they understand that it's what's underpinned their own security.
Daniel, I hope and I pray, and I mean this, that our politicians are listening to you tonight. Thank you for what you said. I hope you'll come back on the program. We appreciate you being with us.
Pleasure to be here, Sean. Thank you. All
right, thank you. Very inspiring. Now, the Republican revolution is just beginning, but you might be surprised to hear who Karl Rove says is responsible for the